Hello, I'm Deacon Carl, and as you may have heard this past weekend, I talked about how welcoming the parish was in Madrid for me during my sabbatical stay in Madrid this past year. And I want to share with you two other special things that happened to me over the past 9 months that I couldn't share in my homily. And I want to start first with a related question. Do you know that there are 3 apostles who are buried near or under the cathedrals that are named after them? One is St. James in Santiago, Compostela. The second, of course, is St. Peter in St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. And the third is St. Thomas in Chennai, India. Well, I had the wonderful opportunity of being able to visit 2 of those during these past 9 months, and I want to share with you a little bit about that experience. The first is St. James Cathedral in Santiago, Compostela. And I always wanted to do the Camino, which is the pilgrimage to St. James Cathedral in Santiago, Compostela. And I was able to do that, my first one, in the middle of March, right before the COVID confinement stay-at-home occurred. I was able to get out of Madrid and go, and unfortunately, before I finished, the COVID announcement had been announced for the confinement, so I wasn't able to go into the cathedral there. But I made it back to Madrid in time for the confinement. And the second time I went on the Camino was with my youngest son, Lucas, and the fiance of my niece in Spain. And one of the reasons that they wanted to go was because of the stories that I told them about my first Camino, my pilgrimage to St. James. And we did that right after the phase 4, when people were allowed to leave Madrid after the confinement. It was a wonderful experience. It's much better to do it with other people. And in this case, we were able to go and celebrate Mass at the cathedral in St. James, Compostela de Camino de Santiago de Compostela. The second place that I had the wonderful opportunity to visit was St. Thomas Cathedral in Chennai, India. And that was in January. I got to spend 9 days there because I was visiting a technical university, a very good technical university in India. They treated me very well. And on Sunday, they gave me a taxi to go visit the cathedral. And they had masses every hour on the hour at this cathedral, and they were all in different languages. And I decided to get there a little early, and I was able to sit in on one of the earlier masses that wasn't in English, it was in an Indian language, and you could tell that they had the same exact procedure that we had for our masses, even though I wasn't able to understand the language. And what was interesting is at the end of the Mass, they had typical announcements, just like we do. But in this case, there was a priest who talked for 20 minutes on the announcements. And I was very curious as to what he was saying. And so when we had the English Mass, I decided to wait and listen to all of the announcements. And I want to share with you what he said, because that was one of the most memorable things of that particular day. Something that you don't typically hear in the US or in Spain. And the priest got up there and he made the typical announcements, and then he said how important it was to go to Mass and how much of a privilege it was for parishioners to go to Mass and how they could honor God and also respect their fellow parishioners. And he said it's very, very, very important for us to get to Mass early and be prepared, and also to stay until the end of the Mass after the blessing that the Father gives. And he was very strict and very boldly stating that. And it was one of the things that I would say he was on fire for God. And this leads me into the last part I'd like to share with you this evening. I'm the RCIA director of the St. Martha Parish, which is the Rites of Christian Initiation of Adults. And this year we started that particular process in the classes, and we have young couples, several young couples who you might say, after I talk to them, is they're on fire for God. And so I want to ask all of you who are listening for 2 favors. The first is that you would pray for them and ask for God's blessing over them and their families during this journey, which is a journey for an entire year. And the second thing I'd like you to do is, if you know of anyone who potentially is interested in becoming Catholic or has questions about the Catholic faith, Invite them potentially to listen to a Mass sitting next to you online or in presence at Mass. Or if they're curious, please send them to the parish office. And we would love to answer their questions and potentially invite them to the RCIA class if they're interested in going. And for those of you out there who may not be Catholic and interested in the Catholic faith or just have questions, I would love to meet with you sometime and help to try to answer some of those questions. May God bless you all.